watching fights like that because I find it quite fascinating, but obviously you've got however many 8,000, 9,000 in there just want to tear up. And all of a sudden the knockdown comes, was it the fifth? Or it starts to get a bit juicier in the fifth, the knockdown comes and it changes the trajectory of the fight. And actually probably at the halfway stage, I had it very close, might have even had Regis just edging it with a knockdown. And then all of a sudden Jack just changed the fight. And I think that, that switched up the excitement levels. You could see how heavy-handed Regis was even early in the fight, and I think that got Jack's attention. And he had to be switched on. Obviously the knockdowns came in the ninth. He won 10, 11, 12, I think he won 8 as well. And you've got to give a lot of respect to Regis because he was badly hurt. He turned his ankle over, he could hardly walk in the last couple of rounds and just never stopped trying. And he said after, this is the best guy I've ever fought by a mile. And I think Jack Catterall is one of the most underrated fighters in the world. I think sometimes the style, to the sort of casual eye, they don't necessarily realise how good he is because he doesn't scream and shout, and he doesn't. It's a bit like Liam Paro. I think Liam Paro is a sensational fighter, but just because he don't scream and shout and backflip here and do all this kind of stuff. And with regards to Teofimo Lopez, like I've said, we'd love to spank him, but he's a very good fighter, and he's a massive star. And I doubt he would come to Manchester, but it'd be some night, wouldn't it? God, imagine bringing Teofimo Lopez to the UK. It'd be brilliant. And, that was the WBO International. Jack is sitting at number 2. I think hopefully it's going to move him closer to that number 1 position. And who knows what Teofimo's going to do? I see him probably moving up to 147. He's got the legal dispute with Top Rank. Maybe Jack fights the winner of Barboza against Ramirez for the vacant title. But we do have 2 guys fighting for the IBF World title on December the 7th in Liam Paro and Richardson Hitchens. So, can we bring that World Championship fight here? Obviously, Liam Paro is going to say, well, what about Australia? Which is something that we'll look at as well. If Hitchens wins, he's going to say, what about New York? Which is something we'd look at as well. So Jack's in a great position. But when you look at his 11 months in Linares, Taylor, Prograis, all headline fights, he really does deserve his shot.
Tom Irish boxing scene. Just wanted to ask you about Campbell Hatton. Obviously 2 defeats in a row to Flint now, and kind of at that English title level. Where does he go from here now?
I think that it's difficult because he's very young. So, like, if the guy was 29, 30, you'd say maybe that's your lot. But when you're enjoying what you do, and I think right now, Campbell Hatton's level is area and English title level. That's no disgrace. A lot of fighters don't even reach that level. But obviously, with our stable and where we're looking to take fighters, we don't really work with and kind of continuously back after back-to-back defeats, area title and English level fighters. Campbell's a little bit different. 1, because he's a really good kid. 2, because he works his nuts off. And 2, because he's given us back-to-back brilliant fights. And he's still young. So Campbell's got to look at himself and say, if that's my level, am I happy to continue? And if he's happy to continue, he should absolutely continue. Whether that's to go and get a couple of fights on, smaller shows and without the pressure of the... I mean, he ends up being co-main event tonight, again in front of like 8,000. It's not easy. And a lot of people thought he won the fight. I went in the change room after, and I said to Ricky thought he edged the fight. And I said, in my opinion, I thought you lost 6-4. But I'm going to give you my honest opinion. But when it's 6-4, it can go either way. But, again, he gave us a brilliant fight, but he just wasn't good enough. And he's not really progressing. The performance wasn't really much better, in my opinion, than the last performance. But he's young, and if he's enjoying the game and wants to stay at it, then he absolutely should.
Regan Slaymaker from International Boxing News. Were the scorecards, right now, one of these now, were the scorecards a little too wide in Jack's favour tonight?
Yeah, I think so. I think one was particularly, I can't really remember, but I had Regis Prograis winning 2 rounds plus the knockdown round. So a 10-8 round, and I think the first, and then was the knockdown the 5th or the 6th? 5th. So the 5th round, the 1st round, and 1 more. I think it was 7 or something like that. So again, I mean, obviously it was a 10-7 round. Jack won 10-11-12, obviously. I think 9 was the 10-7. Thought he won 8. I thought it was the 7, I think Regis won. Jack, I thought, won the round after the knockdown, which was the 6th. So you tell me what's the score. If it's 10-8 and 2 rounds, I don't know, someone tell me. But yes, I thought one of the cards was particularly wide.
Johnny here for Hook Boxing. Eddie, do you think it will be tough, difficult to match Jack? Because, like you say, he's not necessarily jumping around at press conferences, but he is so good. Like, for example, Teofimo Lopez. Do you think it will be difficult to make those fights?
Yeah, I think that it will be more difficult to make because he's very good. Do you know what I mean? But if you look at tonight, if you look at the atmosphere, I mean, that was all of our first times. I loved it. I thought it was really good. You know, imagine when we fill it up, the atmosphere in here will be unbelievable. So that was a good crowd tonight. Like you're not really outside of AJ and outside of Fury and those kind of guys. When are you seeing, like, don't forget the last fight against Taylor, he did virtually 11,000 in Leeds. You know, over 8,000 tonight. Like, it's solid numbers. So a Teofimo Lopez fight would fill up this place. You know, so it's really all about money. I mean, if Liam Paro wins, he won the world title in Puerto Rico. He's defending it in Puerto Rico. He's probably going to say, hang on a minute, I want to go back to Australia and fight. And Jack would go. If Richardson wins, he's probably going to say, I want to defend in New York. And Jack would go. But maybe we come up with a number to tempt him to come here. Because he's selling the tickets.
Eddie Allen here, RTF. Hi. I just want to mention the crowd tonight, the first event in the Co-op Arena. We've had many, many nights in Manchester Arena, the likes of Ricky and Anthony Crowder. Do you think Jack Catterall can make this place a little bit of a fortress over the next couple of years? Because the fans really take to him. He's a lovely guy, as well as obviously having had those great results in the last year.
Yeah, that's what I said, after the fight in the ring. Just a really good bloke. And sometimes the Josh Taylor fight allowed him to show that little bit of spite because they hated each other. But with Regis, it's like they just respected each other, and when you bring them together, you're kind of looking for something. But in the end, you just let Jack be Jack, and that's the great thing about him, is he's very real. He's a real family man. He's a real fighter. He'll fight anyone, and yeah, I think, like, let's be honest, what other fighters from this area are going to drive those kind of numbers in there tonight and beyond? The only people that are going to make bigger crowds than Jack Catterall here are the marquee fights. Eubank Ben, AJ, Fury. They're the ones that are going to fill this place up. But, as you remember with Crawler, we started with 5,000. Then we went to 7, then we went to 8, then we went to 10. And I think Jack's on the same path.
Eddie, can you shed any light on what happened with Michael Gomez Jr.?
Yeah, it was the most bizarre and unique situation I think I've ever seen. I mean, we were sitting at ringside and Dennis Gilmartin called Frank Smith and said, can you and Eddie come backstage ASAP? And we were like, oh shit, that's really bad news, because Dennis would never say that to me. So straight away there's a problem with the fighter. So Frank Smith went back, he sat with the doctors. When Michael Gomez arrived in the changing room, he felt ill, and he was sort of bent over in pain. The doctors looked at him, they ran some tests. I believe they took a urine sample and did some checks on that sample quickly, and they decided that he had an infection and he wasn't fit to fight. And at that point you kind of like, what, are you sure? It's like, no, it's off, mate. They've completely ruled him out. They said there's no way he can fight. And I've never known him an hour before the fight, to be honest with you. And Reece Bellotti was, quite a epic DAZN interview where he thinks that Michael Gomez swallowed it. I'm not, I don't believe a fighter would swallow it an hour before the fight, having trained for 10 weeks and not getting paid and turned up at the venue. But it's a really weird one. And once the British Boxing Board of Control say, our doctors say he is not fit to fight, there's no way back. But obviously disappointing for Reece. we'll get him another fight ASAP and see what happens with Michael Gomez.
October Red here. Good evening, Eddie.
Good
Lovely evening in Manchester. Successful. A lively crowd. Are you going to start to put more shows on in the UK? You could hear the crowd. They were hungry for it. They were there. They were passionate. We want to see more fights from Matchroom in the UK. Is that something that you're looking to do in 2025?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had a good meeting with the Zone at the end of last week, and the strategy is definitely to do more UK shows in 2025. I think, we've got a nice finish with Catterall Prograis and Edwards against Yafai, and I think we're already hoping to get 6,000 or 7,000 in Birmingham, which is really good and solid. And I think the success of Riyadh season has really lifted the general interest in boxing. So I think it's a good time. I think that sometimes there's too big a space between shows, and we just got to get the schedule right to make sure that there's regular activity and consistently big shows. We've got 4 or 5 amateur signings to announce in the next 2 to 3 weeks, as well as anywhere between 2 and 4 main event fighters as well that will feature in the early Q1 schedule. So yeah, we're pumped, we're motivated, and obviously when you have nights like tonight and you see that crowd, you realise that British boxing's still alive and kicking.
Eddie, James Regan from ESPN. Obviously the win was the most important thing for Jack tonight, but after that start, to see him kind of get a couple of knockdowns and turn the screws, how important was that going into a potential world title fight that he showed it on the big stage?
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to grab a world championship fight, you want to look good and you want to be involved in exciting fights. So the first 3 or 4 rounds, I was kind of thinking, I don't want 12 rounds of this. We're in the entertainment business, but also it's difficult when you're in with a world-class operator that can really punch. You're not just going to start jumping in. And the knockdown kind of just kicked the fight into gear. And the last 6 rounds were very exciting. The 2 knockdowns were really big for Jack, not just in the fight, but just in the general momentum of trying to get that shot. I think I said in the week, Jack punches a lot harder than people give him credit for as well. And when someone like Regis Prograis says he's the best fighter I've been in with, it's a pretty big compliment, really. And I thought he was great, Regis.